anxiety for me, and I don't know if it is for you, but it's an everyday battle. It's something that I need to deal with every single day. So to have this toolkit, whatever that is for you, or people listening, is smart. I think it's good to have a routine or a system to know how to deal with some of these situations. And like you said, for me, it was like exercise. It was being in nature. It was like getting toxic people out of my life. It was talking to other people, researching and learning about this disease, taking some CBD oil. So all these things are just part of my life now.
Welcome to Champions Mojo Weekly Podcast, where your hosts Kelly Palace and Maria Parker share with you what it takes to be a champion. Kelly is a former Division I head swim coach, Olympic trials qualifier, and holds Masters World and National swimming records. And Maria holds world records in endurance cycling and was the overall women's winner of the world's toughest bike race, Race Across America. They'll be sharing their personal stories and wisdom, along with interviewing other champions to give you the tools you need for becoming a true champion in your own life. And now, your host, Kelly Palace.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Champions Mojo podcast. And as usual, I am co-hosting with Maria Parker. Hello, Maria.
Hey, Kelly.
Maria, what a fantastic guest we have today. A motivational speaker, a former American professional soccer player, a reality television superstar who won $1 million on season 3 of Survivor, which was Survivor Africa. He's also appeared on Survivor All-Stars and now is embarking on his third Survivor stint as a cast member of season 40, Winners at War, which is going to pit all the former winners of Survivor against one another. We have none other than truly my favorite Survivor winner of all time, Ethan Zohn.
Oh, well, thank you for the wonderful introduction.
Yeah, I'm glad to welcome you too, Ethan. I want to tell our listeners about your, more than being an amazing athlete and superstar on reality TV, you're also a true survivor and an inspiration to the cancer community after overcoming Hodgkin's lymphoma. So we're really, really glad to welcome you to the show.
Well, it's great to be here. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And Ethan, I want to tell you how you ended up on this particular show, because I know it's important to you to change people's lives and to be an inspiration and to be a motivation. And I may start crying here, but I have suffered my entire life on and off with anxiety. I've always kept it kind of, at check, and I've had a very fortunate, successful life with my anxiety, but I had breast cancer 3 years ago. And recovered from that. I got, I had surgery. I got clean margins. I was given a clean bill of health. I mean, you really don't have a clean bill of health on breast cancer for 5 or 10 years, but I, go live your life. And I started to get health anxiety, where every headache, every lump, every bump, I was crazed with anxiety. And so what else did I do? I did an internet search, and your article came up first and foremost on how you had been using CBD oil and how it had helped your anxiety so much. And I related to being a post-cancer survivor and having health anxieties, and I started taking CBD oil. And I am here to tell you, it has changed my life. It has stopped my anxiety. I have not had any anxiety in months.
That makes
and
me
so
feel...
I know. So I wanted to look in your eye like I'm doing right now and tell you face to face that you putting your message out there, putting yourself out there, really reached me. And I know you've got to be reaching thousands more. And yeah, while season 40 is super exciting and I can't wait for it. And I always say on the show, I don't know whether I'm a bigger Survivor fan or a bigger swim fan. So this is really a swimming podcast, but we just interviewed Elizabeth Beisel. We're interviewing you. We have Janet Carbon coming on next week. You're out there just being vulnerable, making a difference, putting yourself out there. So I wanted to start with saying thank you for me personally, and I'm sure there's thousands and thousands more. And I hope that thousands of listeners that we have are going to hear if somebody has anxiety, hey, it worked for you, it worked for me, maybe it'll work for them.
I think what's more is, people don't understand that after you're, supposedly cured from cancer, it might make people feel good to know it's a common thing to have anxiety about the cancer coming back. And so I think you're talking about that was really helpful as well.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing your story. First of all, I feel one of the most effective tools we have as a cancer community is to share our story. The more we share our story, the more people know what cancer is really like and what it's like to rebound and recover and live a new life as a cancer survivor, or cancer thriver is what I like to call it now. And I kind of live my life these days by making sure to never let a crisis go to waste, because it's a really important opportunity to do some smart and exciting and interesting things. And for me, even in the middle of my nightmare, like cancer and survivorship with incredible amounts of debilitating anxiety, I try to kind of focus on other people and use that crisis to educate and inspire people out there. Like maybe the details of my life can help someone else out there, like it did with you. So I appreciate hearing that story, and it makes it all worthwhile to kind of make your battle public, because it's a really scary, gross, ugly, disgusting time of someone's life. And I didn't know what would happen if I opened up my life to complete strangers all over again with sharing this story. But now that I have, and just playing some role in helping others or helping people manage their cancer care has made it worthwhile for me to share my story. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Yeah. So let's start out with catch us up on what you're doing now. I mean, I know you're not allowed to tell us if you won season 40 yet, but what are you doing now?
Well, right now I am, excited about the premiere of Survivor 40, which is Winners at War. So I'll be participating in that, which is super exciting. The show's been going on for 20 years, and I was fortunate enough to play way back in 2001, 2003 in Africa, where I won the grand prize. But one of the fun things that happened because of Survivor Africa is I used some of that money to co-found a charity called Grassroot Soccer. And we are an adolescent health organization that using the power of soccer to help others and young people make smarter choices in life. And, it was just an idea back in the day. Survivor All-Stars came around. Maybe we were graduated 1,000 kids. But now, 20 years later, Grassroot Soccer is operating in 50 countries, and we've graduated over 2.3 million kids from the program. So wow. You guys, as champions and as athletes, you understand the power of sport. And I don't know if everyone out there is familiar with soccer and the popularity of soccer, but if you wrap all the major league and minor league sports in America into one, that's how popular soccer is in Africa. So every little kid wants to grow up to be a professional soccer player, boys and girls. So what we do at Grassroots Soccer is we take professional soccer players, professional coaches, and peer leaders from the community, and we teach them a curriculum about HIV and AIDS and adolescent health, and then we send them into the classrooms or the soccer fields or the churches or the temples to deliver these health interventions. So it's been a really rewarding part of my life, I guess you can say. So that's a lot of what I'm up to.
That is beautiful. So do you actually go to Africa and visit it often, or what is your main role in it?
So my main role now is I'm mostly in charge of non-traditional fundraising, like the marathon team, celebrity soccer games. We have a college and high school campaigns, gala events, those type of stuff. But back in the day, yeah, I was over in Africa all the time, working on the ground with the kids, delivering these health interventions. And it's been such a rewarding experience. And, we talk about the show Survivor and the popularity of Survivor, and it's a global phenomenon back in the day, and it's creating fans all over the world. But what I don't think a lot of people realize is that this show it's doing more than just create fans. Like, it's saving lives. I'm just one contestant who's used the platform of Survivor to go out there and help others. There's hundreds of us now that are doing the same thing, but to be able to have that platform and the opportunity to use this incredible show to go out there and save lives is truly a blessing.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's amazing. And it's interesting. Africa did you choose to start in Africa because you were on Survivor Africa?
Actually, prior to my time on Survivor Africa, I lived and played professional soccer in Zimbabwe.
Oh, okay.
And while I was there, I witnessed firsthand what was happening with HIV and AIDS, and some of my close buddies on my team, the Highlanders Football Club, contracted HIV. They were kicked off the team, ostracized from the community, and lived the end of their life in a really horrible, lonely way. And so at that time of my life, 1999, I didn't really know what I could do about it. Like, what can one person do to help this massive problem in all of Africa? So I did nothing. Like, literally, I said, it's not my problem. Someone else will deal with it. It's in a land far away. I shelved it. I got back to my life in the United States. Survivor came along. And once again, I was brought back to Africa, but this time to Kenya to play the game of Survivor. And what was really interesting on the show Survivor, I had the opportunity to place hacky sack with all these little Kenyan children. I won one of those reward challenges, and I brought a luxury item, which is a hacky sack. So I started playing soccer with these kids in the middle of this game of Survivor, in the middle of this tiny town called Wamba. And I realized at that moment, like, here I am communicating with these kids, laughing, smiling, connecting, having this moment through a sport that we both love, but we didn't really speak the same language. So I saw this, oh my God, soccer is the ultimate connector. It breaks down barriers, it brings people together, and it enables you to deliver these smart and hopefully health interventions to these kids.
It's great.
That is beautiful. If someone wanted to get involved or donate to that, where would they go?
They can go to grassrootsoccer.org. Thank you.
Great.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we want to be respectful of your time, and we have a lot of questions we got to get to. So it doesn't surprise me at all that you took that platform of winning and turning into helping so many people. So we're going to start with you being a champion athlete, a professional soccer player, and how you use some of those techniques that you learned as an athlete to win Survivor.
Yes. Well, I think as a competitive athlete my whole life, I think being a champion in any sport involves like total mental, physical, spiritual expertise in order to achieve greatness in any sport or any skill, actually. So I really, as an athlete, I focused on obviously the physical side of things, but also the mental side of things. So I definitely did a lot of visualization techniques. I played goalkeeper in soccer, so I did a lot of visualization techniques. I met with a therapist. I did yoga. I did a little spiritual, little mental, little physical stuff, and I think that was a huge help in getting me to a high level athlete.
What did you use any of those same techniques? Like when you were playing Survivor, did you visualize winning it? Like in the nights that you were freezing at night and burning up in the day in Africa? Like what techniques would you have transferred to that?
Well, I think playing a team sport and instantly. So Survivor's a really interesting show because Survivor is a game of relationships. It's how you interact with the other people and how you work with these people that determine how well and how far you go in the game. Obviously, some luck and you can, some other stuff going on. But when you're dropped into the middle of 20 strangers and you instantly have to connect with them to be able to work together, I feel my time as an athlete and playing team sports helped in that. And like in terms, I'm not necessarily like the A-type personality, like leader guy who yells up and barks order like a traditional coach that you see. However, I felt that I knew who I was as a person. I knew what I could bring to the table, and I knew who I needed to align with and work with in order to achieve a common goal. So for me out there, I felt really comfortable as like the assistant coach type of role. I aligned with this guy named Lex, who was the head coach, and I was the assistant coach, and we worked together, and we kind of like, I was able to filter some of the information coming from the rest of the tribe, coming from Lex, and use that to my advantage to get ahead in the game. So I really feel kind of just the teamwork, the camaraderie, being positive, making myself a positive and important member of the community out there, because Survivor is sometimes criticized for being like against anything good, anything decent, anything worthwhile. Like in order to win the game, you have to isolate yourself in this little community. But the way I saw it is I made myself a crucial member of the community, crucial to everyone else's survival. So without me, they would have struggled even more. And therefore, they didn't vote me off.
Yeah. And, I've watched, my husband and I have watched every season of Survivor at least twice. And we just kind of rotate them through because you can learn so many lessons. And we picked you as one of the winners that truly did it the nice way, like that didn't backstab, didn't get had a bunch of people hating you, that you did it the nice way. And so I can totally see that was, your perspective of just fitting in with the community, being the assistant coach. Because if you're the head coach, usually you get kicked off.
Yeah, everyone hates the head coach. Everyone loves the assistant coach, right?
Exactly.
So I learned that from playing soccer my whole life.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, you've been at the top of a lot of games, Ethan. You're a terrific athlete. You've won Survivor. You are winning in the world of charitable giving and nonprofits. So, my question for you is, obviously your quality as being relational is a super important quality, but what other qualities do you think you have and other champions share?
I honestly, might sound weird, but like not really having a fear of failure in some way. Like, yes, I've been successful in a lot of things I've attempted, and that's what you hear about, but there's hundreds of things that I failed at getting up until this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people in this world are sometimes like so consumed by the fear of failing that they don't necessarily like try new things. And so I think having the confidence in yourself to be able to, try something and fail at something is something successful champions have. Because as an athlete, you need to be able to lose and just pick yourself back up the next day and go out there and try to win again. You have to learn that scale of being disappointed, of being embarrassed, of failing, letting the world know that you're a failure. But I think that's all like, you can't really, we're all going to have a lot of success and a lot of failures in life, but it's how like you react to these failures and these obstacles in your life that really make you the person you are today. And so if you can kind of overcome those fears and just kind of shift the perspective where the fear of failure is really just not trying, right? So don't be afraid to try. Just worry about all the things you might miss if you don't even try, right? That's what you need to look into.
That is a fabulous answer. That is a fabulous answer. I love it. Yeah. What have you failed at?
Oh man. I mean, the whole one, I wanted to be Olympic figure skater until I had to put on the costumes that they made me skate around with. But the entire reason I tried out for Survivor was after an epic, trail of failures. I had tried out for 3 professional soccer teams in the United States, didn't make any of them, got cut. So like my career was over. I started coaching at Fairleigh Dickinson University in New Jersey, didn't really love it that much. And so I sucked it up and I said, all right, I got to get a job. So I got a job in advertising in New York City. Lo and behold, after I got my job, saw on the contract, there was a hiring freeze nationwide and they didn't let me in. So I was fired before I was even hired. And so now all of a sudden I'm like, what am I going to do today? I was bored and unemployed in New York City. My mom was like, come on, honey, it's time to get a job. I'm like, Mom, I'm in between life choices. I'm not unemployed. I'm in between life choices. That works. And so like my roommate and I just like to occupy a day in New York City, we filmed the tape for Survivor on VHS and sent it in. And obviously I got picked after that. But if it wasn't for multiple different failures in all aspects of my life, I would have never even got on the show that changed my life.
That's great.
I love it. So I want to ask, so obviously you have a strong mindset, and when you're in a territory that you're used to, like soccer or even Survivor, where you've been on a team, you're skilled with that. I would love to talk a little bit deeper about what happened when you hit this fear of anxiety and your health, and drill down for people, because I know we have a lot of listeners, because the anxiety is like the most common mental illness of the day. And so here is an amazingly strong, winning person like you, and you're debilitated by anxiety. And when I try to describe anxiety to people, if you don't have it, you don't understand it. So I would love it if you would share what your anxiety kind of manifested as and what mindset, because maybe CBD oil will work hopefully it'll work for everyone, but if it doesn't, what other tools did you have? And let's just talk about that a little bit.
Sure. I mean, just to give some people a little bit of background, when I was 35 years old, I was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, multiple rounds of chemotherapy, radiation. I had an autologous stem cell transplant, which failed after about 20 months. And then I had to do it all over again, chemo, radiation, and another stem cell transplant, this time using my brother Lee as the donor. And I often tell people, like, people say you're an inspiration, you got through cancer, but like the way I look at it is it's pretty easy to get through cancer. Like when a doctor tells you to do something or you'll die, you pretty much do it, right? But it's after cancer, for me, that was the most difficult. It's the dump trucks full of uncertainty, the invisible scars that need healing. It's all my other friends just starting theirs, and I'm hitting a pause button on my life when all my other friends are starting theirs. So for me, just living in this questionable world and not knowing what my life will look like, I had so many fears. What if I die? What if the cancer comes back? What if I don't get married? What if I never have kids? What if I can't get insurance? What if I can't get a job? Like, my whole life's ahead of me. So I just started getting on this hamster wheel of destructive thoughts, and my brain just would not shut off. It just doesn't shut off. And so when you're sitting at dinner or when you're watching TV or you're going for a jog, it's just a constant, you're just ruminating on these, thoughts. And for me, it was paralyzing. I wasn't living my life. I was living in this fake hamster wheel of life. And I was going out there and speaking to this cancer survivors, telling them like, okay, be strong, be an inspiration. And meanwhile, on the inside, it was like worlds going on. I was living this unauthentic, horrible, fake life because I'm presenting this perfect person, but on the inside, I'm a disaster. And so for me, I literally had to, I moved out of New York City. I moved to the middle of the woods in New Hampshire. I started exercising more. I was seeing a shrink. I started talking to other people who were going through the same situation that I was. I started using some CBD oil. All this stuff were part of my new toolkit to be able to start living again. And it just really, it helped. I got married to my wife, who's been a huge help to me, helping me get through some of these horrible moments. I know we talked earlier about like these what if situations you spoke about. And I think one little thing that's been hugely helpful for me is like, I obsessed about the what if situations. And what I learned is that when you come up to a what if situation, like what if the cancer comes back, what my wife and I figured out was I literally would create and write out a plan for this what if situation. So what if I get cancer? Okay, I got to go to the doctor, got to tell my mom, got to do chemo, I got to go to the hospital, it's going to suck. And then I filed that away literally in a file case. And then next time I had that thought, what if I get cancer? In my brain, I was like, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I got a plan. It's already written down on paper. I can absorb it and then move on. And because if you start obsessing over these what if scenarios, these things that may not happen, like it may never happen. And now you're just obsessing about something that doesn't happen. And you're missing out on that entire day because you're obsessing on something that may or may not happen. So that was a little thing that helped me get through the what if scenarios.
I love it.
Yeah, that is a terrific little tip. I really like that for anxiety because, yeah, otherwise that stops the loop right there because I've got a plan for it.
So in your toolkit, I think people, obviously there's so many great online counseling now. So you did some counseling.
A lot of counseling.
you talked to people. I think when you keep it in your head, it's more scary. If you actually say it to somebody, I'm afraid of this, they're like, what are the chances of that? So opening up to someone, whether that's counseling or a good friend that's going to listen. And in my toolkit, which helped me too, besides CBD oil, did you do any meditation?
Yeah. I wasn't good at it, but I definitely tried it.
Yeah. Meditation, I really notice a correlation between lower anxiety when I meditate daily. So having a whole toolkit for anxiety is great. I'm just glad that everybody got to hear that from you because I think the thing that really struck me besides the CBD oil when I read the article about you was you said, hey, I realized that this was normal among cancer survivors. This was kind of the norm. And I think that's when you think, wow, that's kind of normal, then it takes take some of the scariness out of it.
Anxiety for me, and I don't know if it is for you, but it's an everyday battle. It's something that I need to deal with every single day. So to have this toolkit, whatever that is for you, or people listening, is smart. I think it's good to have a routine or a system to know how to deal with some of these situations. And like you said, for me, it was like exercise. It was being in nature. It was like getting toxic people out of my life. It was talking to other people, researching and learning about this disease, taking some CBD oil. So all these things are just part of my life now.
That's great. Do you go for, you said it's an everyday thing, but do you go for periods where you don't experience anxiety now? Or is it something you just every day you have to deal with?
I would say it's every day I have to deal with. And like, I sit with my wife, who's totally chill, and she does not have much anxiety. And I see how she's functioning in life, and then I see how I'm functioning in life, and I can see the difference. And like, I'm striving to be a little bit more like her and a little calm. But once I realize that, I got some things going on, I need to address them. And it's, once again, it's acceptance and the fear. I mean, now I'm the guy that I was like talking about. Like, I didn't want to be the anxiety guy, but now I'm the anxiety guy. And so to admit that and accept it has been a big part of it as well.
I think anxiety has some positive things to it. Both depression and anxiety, all things, there's a positive and a negative. Do you see any positives to your anxiety, Ethan?
Yeah, I think, I'm prepared. I over prepare, I guess you can say, whether that's a good or a bad thing. A little bit of a perfectionist. So I definitely take time to care about myself, which it forces me to take care of myself a little bit more than I was before.
Well, that leads me to a question that I have is, what rituals or routines do you use that you think have played a part in your success, besides those dealing with anxiety things that you mentioned?
Well, I think I mentioned this earlier, but I'll reframe it. I think the one thing that's helped me tremendously is like focusing on others. I think focusing on the plight of other human beings helps you heal as a human. So even in the middle of all these horrible situations that I've been in, I was in Africa and saw people die of AIDS and helped start Grassroot Soccer. I had cancer and I shared my story to try to help other people out there. I have anxiety, so now I'm getting into the whole anxiety and trying to get people on CBD. So at every moment in my life where I had an opportunity to turn inward and isolate myself from everyone else, I tried to do the opposite and focus outward and focus on other people, because I know as a human being, it helps you heal. And that was really one of, and I still live that way today, service over self. And I think it's just been really important for me in my survivorship, I guess you could say. And I'm trying to reframe the word. Everyone's called, like, obviously the word survivor has a lot of meanings to me. And I'm trying to use the word, like, I feel like when you're surviving something, you're like, you're grasping at straws, you're struggling, you're just trying to get over that hump, like you're trying to survive. And so when you're a survivor, I don't necessarily think that's the best word to describe someone who's overcome a challenge or a health challenge. I think it should be like a thriver. Like when you're surviving it, that's like when you're in it. But when you're finished, you're now thriving in life. So instead of cancer survivors, I think it's good if we say like cancer thrivers.
I like that.
Yeah, that is an awesome one. So let's get into Survivor just a little bit, the game, not the play, but so as someone with anxiety and someone who's always, I'm kind of like Siri. I've dreamed of getting off the couch and getting in there one day, but my hug's like, I don't know if my anxiety would handle it. So if you are an anxious person, just in general, maybe not, hugely anxious, but how do you go out there with the bugs and the lack of sleep and
that stuff's easy.
Yeah, like really, like, so that stuff doesn't bother you.
That stuff does not bother me. I think Survivor, it's today's game. It's less about surviving and it's more about the gameplay and the strategy and the idols and the clues and the blind sides, which makes the game exciting. I'm going to be that old school player back in the day when we really had to survive and get our own water. No, but it was scary for me because, when I was a 27-year-old kid, young, fit, it didn't matter. Like none of that stuff. I did not have a care in my life when I went and played the first time. Now, completely different situation, having, been through a lot of stuff, survived cancer twice. So I was definitely a little bit nervous to head out there without my wife and my 2 kitties and my CBD. Like I actually asked Survivor doctors, like, can I take cannabis? Can I take CB out there? And they're like, it's not legal in Fiji, so you can't do it. So I was like, oh crap, what's gonna happen now?
Oh gosh.
It was I was definitely a little bit nerve wracking. Not to mention everyone's out to get you. So like your stress levels and anxiety and fear, it's like walking into the lunchroom when you're a teenager and not knowing where to sit and everyone's staring at you and you think your girlfriend's cheating on you at the same time. This is my life for the next 39 days. What the heck is going to happen?
I'd also like to hear you talk about preparation, because you see it as sort of a negative maybe for your anxiety, but I think your preparation is what makes you amazing. So if, do you think preparation is important in overcoming an obstacle?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel preparation is important in overcoming an obstacle. For example, knowing that I was going to have to go out and play Survivor again after 15 years of not playing and the game's completely different, I definitely had to prepare for something along, to this magnitude. I started getting in shape. I started reading personality books, and I started like tying knots, and I did, meditation a little bit, puzzles, personality traits, reading lips, body language, all this stuff that I wanted to do to prepare as best I could to go play the game again. And for example, backtracking, like before my second stem cell transplant, I was on an experimental new drug, and it didn't really necessarily have the side effects that you normally see with people that go through chemotherapy. But I literally had about 3 months, and I did everything in my power to get in the best shape possible to go in to get a stem cell transplant. Right. So I prepared my body, my mind, my spirit to get ready to approach this transplant and chemotherapy regime like the biggest sporting event of my life.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly how I looked at it. And I realized when I was a competitive athlete growing up, like when I did some like visualization training or like even Reiki or chiropractic after a training session, I was a much better athlete. And so I brought that same philosophy into my battle with cancer. And I knew that I was going to need to take a holistic approach to my cancer care. So in addition to chemotherapy, radiation, all that stuff the doctor's prescribing, I want to have some control over my own destiny. So I started eating better. I started exercising. I started visualization. I did Reiki, acupuncture, chiropractic. I met with shrinks. I actually went to visit some Haitian women in the basement of a Brooklyn apartment that spit on me and was yelling and doing some crazy stuff. And like past life regression, and met with like healers. So like, yeah, I did everything possible to best prepare myself to go through this fight with cancer. And that's the good news. The bad news is I don't know what works, so I have to do everything every day.
That's a great answer, Ethan. Thank you.
That's wonderful. So for our hardcore Survivor fans, we've got to ask the question, what is your take on just the phenomenon? If someone had told you you'd be in season 40 of Survivor, like what's going on?
It blows my mind. Having played the game early on, Survivor 3, just at the start of the whole reality TV craze, never in a million years did I think this show would be as successful as it has for the past 20 years. And just to be part of it, to be part of that story, to be just a small, part of everyone's, all these fans out there, it's an honor to be involved. It's exciting to be asked back. For me, it's like the perfect little like bow on this end of this life of this Survivor gave to me. So for me, it's just it's pretty awesome. And there's a lot of promos and advertisements going out there right now that CBS is putting out there. And I said it in my I said it in the promos. Just being here in Fiji right now is an absolute miracle, and that's the truth. Getting to this point was such a huge obstacle for me. In 2010, I was asked to come back, but I was in the middle of getting chemo. So I couldn't do it. And I was in the hospital watching all these other people on TV playing this game that I so desperately want to be on. So at that moment, I was like, all right, I'm going to first, I hope I stay alive. But if I do, I'm going to do everything in my power to be mentally, physically, and spiritually ready to go play this game whenever that is. And it took me 10 years to get there. I finally did it.
So second to last question. Of all, because I did read that you have watched every Survivor episode, every season, and that you've followed it. What has been just one, it doesn't have to be the, preeminent, but just one storyline out of Survivor that has really inspired you in the last 40 seasons?
I don't necessarily want to give credit to Boston Rob and Amber Burkich, now Amber Mariano, for the past 16 years, but their story is truly incredible and inspiring. Having met on the show, Amber winning, Rob playing a bunch of times, and he won again, having 4 beautiful daughters. I mean, this television show is creating lives. It's saving lives. It's changing people's lives. And those two are just one taste of what this show's potential is for anyone who gets involved and for all the people watching.
Yeah,
How
absolutely.
about this? Here's a good thing for you guys. Ready for this one? So when I was sick in 2010, we had just lost one of our fellow cast members. Her name was Jennifer Lyon. She lost her life to breast cancer, and I was battling my Hodgkin's lymphoma at the time. So I approached CBS and Survivor and say, hey, can we do something? And so we created Survivor Stand Up to Cancer, which was a partnership between Survivor, the TV show, and Stand Up to Cancer, the charitable organization, and created Survivor Stand Up to Cancer, where they auction off all the props from Survivor that you see in the game. They auction off on eBay to raise money for rare cancer research. Some of the money that was raised through Survivor Stand Up to Cancer, that went through Stand Up to Cancer, that funded the drug that I was then a recipient of, that saved my life. How effing crazy is that? Talk about a full circle situation and then now I'm back again playing on the show that changed my life, that saved my life. I don't know. My mind gets blown when I think about stuff like that, to be honest. So like I said before, this show isn't just creating fans, it's actually saving lives. And people don't realize that.
I think I love that. And I think one of the tools that you haven't mentioned but I keep hearing it over and over in your stories is your gratitude and the way you look for things to be good, to see the beautiful, positive patterns in life. I think that's a great tool that maybe you don't even know you use, Ethan.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's nice to hear. I think in this day and age, what's going on in the world today, just the simple concept of being kind to another person means so much. Like, let's try to make kindness normal again,
Wow, that's great. I think maybe we should end it there, Kelly. That's so great.
Is there anything that we have not asked you that you would like to share?
Yeah, I mean, so I am, like, CBD has been a big part of my life. And because of that, and because I was living such a synthetic lifestyle in New York City, and I was popping all these prescribed pills to like get me healthy again, I didn't really like living this synthetic lifestyle. And so when I got involved with CBD, I really wanted to see how this whole process worked. So I invested in a farm in upstate Vermont called Mont Kush with 2 of my buddies, Anthony Sullivan and Dave Christian. And so now I moved up there because I wanted to plant the seeds. I wanted to see how it was grown. I wanted to harvest it. I wanted to process it, because if I'm putting anything in my body, I wanted to know where it came from and how it got there. And so now, I'll be coming out with a line of CBD products with Mont Kush, which is really exciting, specifically focusing on people with anxiety. And that's something that I'm really proud of, and I'm excited to be able to share with the world.
That is awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. Where can we go to find out more about that if we're interested?
Soon, montkush.com.
Mont Kush. How do you spell Mont Kush?
Montkush. It means happy mountain.
Oh,
and it's also an ode to the capital of Vermont is Montpelier. Or Montpelier. Sorry, I pronounced it incorrectly. So.
Well, wonderful. Well, I think that there's so much here. I'm so grateful for what you've done for me personally, and I know our listeners are going to get a ton out of this.
And I'm also interested in rare cancers. My sister died of brain cancer, so I want to thank you too for going to Survivor with that partnership and knowing that there's money being raised out there for all kinds of cancers. It's a scary and difficult battle, and thank you. Thanks for all you've done.
I appreciate that. And, I want to thank you guys. And I think it's very inspiring that, people like yourselves are talking to us to be able to share our stories. So thank you guys for having me on.
Wonderful.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, Maria, we just spoke with Ethan Zohn. What a fantastic, inspirational, authentic, kind, loving human being. I'm blown away.
Me too. He's really thought through some difficult issues, and he's one of my favorite interviews. Absolutely.
Yes. What a champion, a winner, a survivor, a thriver. That was one of the things, I love his whole attitude. It just a great, great human.
Takeaways, takeaways, takeaways. We've heard from you that your favorite section of our podcast is the takeaways. Thank you so much for that feedback. But before we get to the takeaways today, we wanted to ask you if you would please give us a 5-star review. That way, more people will be able to find our podcast. Also, if you could subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher or Spotify, you'll never miss a podcast episode if you subscribe. And please share our podcast with your friends. And now, the takeaways.
Takeaways. What is your first takeaway, Maria?
Well, there's a lot there, but I'm going to say that I absolutely adored how authentic he was, how honest he is about everything. But particularly around his cancer. I mean, he really fought cancer, and it almost took his life. And he then had and has anxiety around it, and to share with the whole wide world, sort of, this fear that you have is beautifully authentic. And I think, well, it helped you. And I think it's going to help a lot of people, just that showing his
vulnerability.
His vulnerability is, trying to be truly honest about who he is and how he struggles. So I thought that was really, really beautiful. What about you, Kelly?
Yes. It touched me. I opened the show with it. That's how we actually connected with him, as I was researching some relief for anxiety, and I found Ethan and what he had found. And he's just super authentic, shared his fear of death, fear of, his anxiety, his he decided, I'm just going to put myself out there. And if I can help somebody, then I'll help them. And I love that authentic and vulnerable is your first takeaway. And that leads right into my first takeaway, which is that when he suffers, he helps others. And he doesn't even have to be suffering, but it's kind of a twofold thing. So one, if he comes up against something that's hard or something that's taxing or that he is suffering, instead of just examining his navel, he thinks, I'm going to help someone else and that'll get my mind off of it. And so he helps others, whether he's suffering or even when he's on top of the world. He wins Survivor, wins $1 million. He doesn't go out and buy a new car. Well, maybe he did, but it's not the first thing on his mind. He started a charity. And so I think he's just really others-oriented, a guy that's trying to do good in the world, and he really is, and just very inspirational, very altruistic, and I'm just hugely impressed by that. And my takeaway is that when you're suffering, there's probably someone suffering more, or if you turn your focus outward, you're going to get some kind of relief.
Yeah, you're taking your mind off yourself.
How about your second?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really excellent takeaway, and I think that's something I should write on my wall in big letters. It's like, if you're hurting, if you're suffering, who can you who can you help? How can you turn this into something good for somebody else? And you also, he also said, you learn so much in your suffering and your difficulties. But my second takeaway was his preparation. I guess everybody who goes on Survivor, prepares, but he after he is now thriving after cancer, and he is on the next, the 40th, is it the 40th?
Yes, 40th season.
Yeah. He did a whole bunch of stuff to get himself ready for that. He didn't just walk into it and say, okay, he didn't just lift weights. He learned to, or relearn to deep sea dive, and did a lot of meditation, and he thought of all the ways that he could prepare himself. So I think, I'm sure we've mentioned this takeaway when we talk to champions, but I don't know if you can overemphasize the importance of preparation when you've got something big coming. What can you do to prepare yourself? And that will give you confidence going in. So I think, I love that he prepared himself. And he also did it with his cancer. He did his research. He learned, he did that with his anxiety. He tried to figure out what he could do. He's done that with his diet. He is a student and a preparer. And I think that's what makes him, in part, such an amazingly impactful person in the world.
Yes, absolutely. I like that one a lot too. And for a little humor, I'm sure people have heard the P to the 7th, which is a Parkerism. Do you know what P to the 7th is, Maria?
No. Oh, I think I do, actually.
Proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance.
Right. You're right. Okay.
I've heard my dad say that so many times. So P to the 7th. But yes, preparation is important for everything. So my last takeaway was huge in something we can do all the time is visualizing a vision of the future, a future that is attractive to you, a future that you're excited about. So when we talked about him being on Survivor almost 20 years later from when he won it, it's, he had been asked to come back before, but he was going through, his cancer treatments. So having that vision of being on Survivor once again, because we asked him, kind of what's the meaning of being on Survivor again? And he said, hey, I visualized this. I wanted to be back out here. I'm enjoying, I visualized myself seeing the ocean and watching the sunrises and the sunsets and smelling the salt air and, being in that moment in the future. And I think that was wonderful for him to visualize, maybe while he was in bed, sick, not feeling well, thinking, one day again, I'm going to be on Survivor one day again, because Survivor does have a pattern of inviting back either winners or fan favorites, or, they do bring back former contestants, and Ethan was one of the very favorites and certainly a winner. So maybe he knew, one day he is going to get the chance to go back on Survivor. And so I love that takeaway of hold out a vision in your mind of something that is really pleasant and something you can look forward to, and put all the 5 senses around it, the sight, the smells, the sounds, the taste, everything to get there. And I just love that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, that he talked about sitting in the hospital bed, watching the Survivor episode and seeing himself there. And that's something that I don't do enough of. I think it's you're really good at it, Kelly, the vision board, the concept. And when I've been successful, I have done that. So, I mean, I think envisioning, even if you're in a dark time, perhaps, or struggling, you can envision the future where all of those difficulties that you're experiencing have worked out, whatever it is. And, so for him, it was this beautiful idea of, coming back to Survivor and full health and able to, do all the difficult things that you have to do on Survivor. So he's laying in bed all skinny and sick, and he's imagining himself. And of course it came true. Yes.
And not even if you're in dark times. I think especially if you're in dark
yeah.
times, that's
Yeah.
when you really need it most. It's easy to just kind of float through life when you're happy, but I think it's essential to, when you're in dark times, just visualize those bright times ahead, and then that will kind of draw you up and out of the dark times. So,
Yeah.
well, there were many takeaways.
It's a great interview. He's a great man.
Great man. So grateful that we got to speak with him in person, and really wish him all the best. And we are still in the middle of season 40. Hopefully Ethan continues to plow through ahead to win. But you never know. He may get voted off tonight. He may already be voted off, but we're going to be cheering for him. So, well, thanks, Maria. It was great
All right.
being on this journey with you. Love you.
Love you too, Kelly. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This week's quote of the week comes to us from Ethan Zohn. I think in this day and age, just the simple concept of being kind to another person means so much. Let's try and make kindness normal. You've been listening to the Champions Mojo podcast, designed to make you feel inspired, motivated, and educated. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. Also visit championsmojo.com to learn more.